Anupalaya Vajra Satwa Denopa Tishta Dedo Membawa Suto Kayo Membawa Supo Kayo Membawa Anurato Membawa Sarva Siddhim Memprayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shreya Guru Aho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajre Bhava Mahasamaya Sato Vajra Satwa Samayam Anubhalaya Vajra Satwa Denopa Tishta Dedo Membawa Suto Kayo Membawa Supo Kayo Membawa Anurato Membawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shreya Guru Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajre Bhava Mahasamaya Sato Om Vajra Sato Samayam Anupalaya Vajra Sato Tenopa Tishta Dedo Membawa Suto Kayo Membawa Supo Kayo Membawa Anurato Membawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shreya Guru Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Muncha Vajre Bhava Mahasamaya Sato. There's someone at the door not knowing what to do. So please. So we continue with the program for today. In case you don't have a copy of the sadhana text, Alex is handing them out. So in the Vajrayana tradition, there is an emphasis on having three parts to support our practice. It is essential to have the proper empowerment. It is essential to have the oral or reading transmission for the specific practice. And it is essential to have the instructions on how to practice. So this is known as the Wang, the Lung, and the Tri. So Wang, we had this morning. So that's the empowerment. The Lung and the Tri, we're going to do that now. So in terms of the Lung, which is the oral or the reading transmission, this oral or reading transmission, the idea is that this practice text should not just come to us as words printed on paper, but it should come to us, this practice text, as a lived experience. So often the language of blessings is used, but I think maybe this expression blessings, blessings, blessings is overused and is kind of fuzzy as to what we mean when we say, oh, I got the blessings, oh, I didn't get the blessings. So often you'll hear that when you receive the reading or the oral transmission, the lung of a particular practice, then you receive the blessings. So again, I think the way we think about what this blessings is so that the text, the practice comes to us as a lived experience rather than simply words printed on paper. Furthermore, for the first few hundred years of the Buddhist tradition, all the teachings were passed down orally from teacher to student. This is not because ancient India there was no written script. In fact, there was written script. But especially during the time of the Buddha and ancient India, it is considered that spiritual material should not be put into written form, but should be kept and transmitted orally. Of course, back then, people's memory are a lot better than now. So that's one element. Yeah. And also in India, they have developed rather sophisticated ways of memorizing texts. And there were professionals who were charged with the task of memorizing important texts. During the Buddha's time, when people wrote, it was done for paperwork. Like same kind of paperwork, maybe not to the extent that we have now, but paperwork to keep track of who owes what money for how much, to keep track of how much you bought and how much you sold for. And so for trade, for governmental purposes, they use writing. For religious and spiritual purposes, they were not written down. The other aspect of not writing spiritual or religious instruction down, I think, is again to emphasize the social nature of what we do as a spiritual practice. This is especially helpful to remember, especially, I think, many of us in the United States, and it's also, I see this happening in other places. I don't think it's a US thing, but it is a way of being in the world, which Americans in the US have gotten so used to that we don't even think much about it, which is this individualistic to the point of being isolated, so that we want everything to be comfortable and in our own terms. So we, prefer to have the freedom to pick and choose. It's not guaranteed that you will fail. At least I don't think so. I think, yeah, maybe you can do that. But it also means then, you have to figure things out completely on your own if you just pick and choose. Imagine, can you get well from a physical ailment where you just pick and choose? Maybe, there are definitely cases of people getting better because they made intelligent and the right choices by picking and choosing, what kind of medical intervention to have. But for the most part, we may not have the expertise. I think likewise, to be fair, you could say in the old days, maybe we trust too much what the authorities tell us. So maybe that's not healthy as well. I think a healthy one is to recognize our limits and to recognize our responsibilities. And that's always a dance, between our limits and our responsibilities and our abilities. So all that is always in a dance, a delicate dance that we have to be present and be alive to. So we um, take we take what we can, and we want to make sure that we're taking the right things, and then we have to see how much of that we can digest, how much of that is relevant to us. So anyway, this reading transmission is what I will do now. So then all you do really is to listen to it. So first in Tibetan, then also in English, because I'm responsible for the particular English that has been chosen for this text. So also I will do the reading transmission in English. Om Shunyata Gena Bajra Swabhava Anmago Han Cho Dan Juni Sungwa Dan Zimpe Du Pe Chu Tam Che Rangshin Tongpa Chenpo Ose Dewa Dampe Rangshin Ni Du Gyur Tongpe Ngangle Sungwe Korlo Yang Pe Usu Pe Ma Marpo Dang Ru Ningkar Nime Den La Hri Yik Marpo Ye le pe ma marpo ze udu hri marpo zen pale utro doni jesu de jedu yong su gyur pale rang i rikje ma pe ma rage lumpo ta marwa kyutron che pa o kargi gingwa ge ni lon pe na zo chen Tramar seng sergen du ze pa ula sanje nga shubha to kam nye ugen dang go lo nga chu tsa che ge do shao chen shao che wa sik pa ja zhe chen sum ma la dum pa yon du ta wa tro ge cha be nyam chen ru pe cha gya nga chang wa cha we cha ni me to mar po shu dang u pe mar po kama je be de u ching gi na da na we bar du jen pa ye o ma u pe mar po cha kyu dang yo o ma pe me zen po shang pa mar po zen pa Rang uni ma bungi o chen tro pe chi ro du tro chen po ye ki yong su korwa de da ki terwa karpo limpa amar po ninka hong po de sum le o ze na so tro pe ye she sen pa cho dang wang ye la nam tung ye nam ka chen da Bajra push pe pate ja so bajra tu pe pate ja so Om Benja Aloke Pate Jaso Om Benja Gende Pate Jaso Om Benja Nevede Pate Jaso Ha Cha Hom Bam Ho Samaya Satam Ahong Gi Yeshe Pa Dang Dam Se Pa Nisu Me Bargyo Wangi La Sarva Tatagada Abhisin Chantu Ma She soba tabe wangi le rinpoche bumpa dutsi chugyungi gangwa nane sarva tatagata abhishekata samaya shri hong she wang kurukugan dimada chue lagma yarlu bale rang riki Tapo sobo gyurpe ringe ugen wangi la namrang nila timpargyu Sarva Tathagata Kurukule Saparivara Sa Argam Padyam Pushpe Dube Aloke Gende Nevede Shabda Pradeja Soha Tseve Je Chape Marage Do Shochi Chasi Shabni Sebeku Tazu Ubel Chakyu Shapa Zin Chumden Rikje Mala Chase Tukar Pede Tendula Rangi Sabongi Tarangateng Marpo Korbale Ozetro Sanje Changsen Tamche Chuchin Jin Labdu Kamsum Gi Semchen Tamche Ki Dik Trip Jang Nyang Yen Le De Be Kompang Lako Trin Le Tamche Drubar Je Surudu Nganten Sabonda Chebala Timpar Gyu Kurukule Hri Soha Majoba Danyam Padang Gangyan Nuba Majiba Lakche Nongpar Gyurupana Dekun Yogi Zopar So Om Bazara Sata Samaya Manupalaya Bazara Sato de no Badita de Dom Babasitoka Memo Suboga Sarva Karma Suchamecha Dam Shram Guru Hong Ha 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 Magaman Saba Tatagata Basaman Mujabasebo Mahasamaya Sato Yeshe Parang Jingi Ne Sushela Tamse Dang No Jurang Jingi Dabe Ming Me Ozel Dewa Chenpo Rang Shiki Ngowo Tongpa Ni Du Yu Sonam De Ye Kamsungi Samchen Tamje Gi De Shin Shebe Yeshe Nurdu To Bara Gyurji. So the English, I guess, will be done in the context of the explanation. So at the cover, you see herein is the sadhana of Red Kurukule from the precious garland of sadhanas. The precious garland of sadhanas is the reference to the title that contains the 50 empowerments alongside the 50 sadhanas. It's called the precious garland of sadhanas. A rather generic name, actually. Many collections of sadhanas are called the precious garland of sadhanas. Garland, more literally, is referring to the mala, the rosary. Mala is a Sanskrit word that refers to both the rosary and a garland of flowers. Actually, in Sanskrit, they would call it japa mala. Hindus would call it japa mala. Japa is recitation, and so the garland for recitation. So precious garland refers to garland, mala refers to this. Sadhana is, as you already know, I think many of you have heard this in the last two empowerments. Sadhana means a means for achieving siddhi. Sadhana, siddhi, a means for achieving siddhi. Siddhi refers to accomplishments or attainments. And so here when it says the sadhana of Red Kurukule, it is a means of attaining Kurukule, a means of actualizing this state, the qualities of Kurukule. So it's not so much a means of worship, which is puja. Although sometimes, colloquially, people will say, oh, we are doing the Kurukule puja. Actually, more accurately, it's a sadhana. Sadhana, therefore, is a genre of ritual/meditative text. Puja is another genre of ritual/meditative texts. But anyway, this is called the sadhana, the means of accomplishing Red Kurukule. This sadhana here, let's first talk about whenever you engage in sadhana practice, it's good to recall what's known as the three excellences, which is three things that you want to keep as part and parcel of your practice of the sadhana. And the first one is called the excellent motivation, which we should generate, which we should kind of tap into, touch base with at the beginning of the practice. And this is the excellent motivation, which is the motivation of bodhichitta. Bodhichitta, as I've said many times, but we have to repeat it again and again, bodhichitta is not just compassion. There's a different word for compassion, karuna. But somehow, I don't know how, in the West especially, bodhicitta has been turned into simply compassion. Compassion is an indispensable element in this bodhicitta. But bodhicitta is more than compassion. Bodhicitta, literally, bodhi is awaken or awakening. Chitta is simply heart or mind. The heart or the mind of being awake. So I think in English it works very well to say awakened mind and awakening mind. Their awakening mind is what the technical reference is to what's known as relative bodhicitta. Awakened mind is a reference to ultimate, absolute bodhicitta. So bodhicitta has two aspects to it, the relative aspect and the absolute aspect. The relative aspect of bodhicitta is primarily what is being referred to when we say the excellence at the beginning is the excellent motivation. It's relative bodhicitta. So there are many different wordings to formulate this state of mind, this state, this heart, this attitude. And the simplest is to say, I will achieve the state of Buddha, do whatever it takes in order to bring benefit to all others. And that's relative bodhicitta. I will achieve the state of Buddha, do whatever it takes in order to benefit others. So the part about benefiting others, there is temporary benefiting others, which all of us can do, and all of us should do whenever we can. So these are all the simple things that we can do for others to make life easier for others. Of course, we should do that. But here, the aspiration or the vow is not so much talking about this, the temporary benefit. It's talking about the lasting benefit. And what is the lasting benefit that we can bring to others or help others reach? Which is to become Buddhists, to become awake. So this is at the core of relative bodhicitta. Now, why do we want others to have lasting benefit? Oh, because, they're troublesome, Then that's not bodhicitta. You just want to get rid of troublesome people around you. So even though there is wisdom in the sense of knowing the only way to really get rid of troublesome people is when they become Buddhists. Okay, good. There is wisdom there. But it's not yet bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta, because relative bodhicitta has to be driven by, powered by, egged on by love and compassion. And so it's not enough to just say, I used to joke, I said, the Buddhist equivalent of the expression go to hell is, go to Buddhahood. Right? The Christian context of telling someone to go to hell is once you go to hell, you never come back. So your problem is gone, when you wish someone, go to hell. Essentially, you're saying, get out of my face, don't come back again, don't give me trouble, right? Now, from a Buddhist point of view, we're like, well, that doesn't help because they go to hell for a while, they get angrier, and then they come back. Right? You're like, now we have a bigger problem, right? So we say, go to Buddhahood. So next time you want to curse someone, you say, go to Buddhahood, But if it is just that, again, it's not bodhicitta. It's only bodhicitta when it's motivated by care and concern. Yeah. So the love and the compassion piece needs to be the motivating, pushing factors, pushing them to where, pushing you to where, pushing them to where, to the state of being awake. That is the excellent motivation at the beginning. It's hard to have that excellent motivation at the beginning. If we are honest about it, most of us get up and do our practice or sit down to do our practice. Most of us sit down to do our practice primarily because I want to get something out of this, right? I mean, if we're honest about it, we will all admit, I want to get something out of this, right? Of course, we all start there. But we need to touch base with the excellent motivation and say, that should really be what's, motivating me to commit to doing this. Or whatever spiritual practice you do, we say it should be motivated by bodhicitta. In fact, we say that if it is motivated by bodhicitta, then even spiritual practices that are not quote unquote Buddhist can turn into a way of waking up. Once there is bodhicitta there, they say even, this is a very good example actually. Hey, Nathan, go get the Tata print, the heavy one. They say even making water tatas can bring amazing benefits. What is water tatas? Tatas, first of all, are these, this is a tata mold. And what you do is you put clay, make the imprint of the sacred statue, a sacred image, right? And you make a clay one, right? And then you distribute them. So the idea is to bring more sacred images into the world, to bring more beauty and awakening into the world by making these tatas. But there is a practice of doing water tatas. Like what? Yes. So go by a river and even for that brief moment of this, if it is done with bodhicitta, then it's beneficial. They say this. So you just take this, and you can make infinite tatas, Yeah, next time you go tubing down that dangerous river, which I do not recommend. But if you have to, bring this, la 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 la. Yeah. So you are making water tatas. So that's the excellent motivation at the beginning. That's the relative bodhicitta. So that's the awakening mind. Because by having that mind, having that heart, having that motivation, having that aspiration, we are on the way to waking up, becoming Buddha. Next, absolute bodhicitta is the awakened mind. This awakened mind is basically, in other contexts, is the state of Buddhahood. The awakened state itself. In the awakened state, especially from a Vajrayana perspective, It's not some goal that you arrive at down the road over there. We say that it's a present reality which we need to realize, not a situation that we need to put together for further down the road, but rather it's a reality that is already present. But right now, why are we not experiencing this reality? Because we are covered by layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of masks, the bad kind of mask. We have covered our true identity. And we have identified with these temporary identities instead of seeing our innate inborn identity, which is awake, which is Buddha. Buddhas are not only free of all confusion, Buddhas are replete with good qualities. So that is the awakened heart, the awakened mind. That is absolute bodhicitta. How do we cultivate absolute bodhicitta? That is the second excellence, the excellence in the middle. The excellence in the middle then, in practical terms, is that then when we start doing this particular sadhana, this particular practice, at all times we need to maintain a clear understanding about the basic teachings that point to how everything appears a particular way, and the way things appear is the way they appear to you. Recognize that your perception of what is going on is at the end of the day your perception. Yeah. Now, this is not to be applied into the world of science, the world of news reporting. Yeah? We're not saying you can have whatever version of truth you want. Yeah? So please don't extend it into those realms. Here to train yourself to understand when you have a strong feeling towards, especially when you feel strongly about a situation, whether strongly happy, joyous, yeah, or depressed, disappointed, frustrated, vengeful, see how that situation is basically your own projection. Recognize that, and recognize that it's interdependently arising temporarily. It has no essence. And the more we are able to train in this way, this basic understanding, the more we will not get stuck. So apply this into the context of the excellence in the middle. We will talk more about this. Then here, it's the appearance of Kurukule and then the essence of Kurukule, inseparable, but all of it appearing vividly, but like a dream. Appearing vividly, but like the rainbow. So the excellence in the middle is not fixating, not grasping. And so even with regards to this divine form of Kurukule, which is beautiful, wonderful, inspiring, ... all of that, our relationship to it, the way we train ourselves towards it, has to be free from grasping. So that's the excellence in the middle, and that's grounded in absolute bodhicitta. Then the excellence at the end is the excellence of dedication, which is to say at the end, whatever good, whatever benefit that I have gained from doing this practice, I dedicate this good, I dedicate this result I dedicate this merit towards the freedom of suffering of all beings. Now we have come one full circle back to the very beginning, right? But from the perspective of these two bodhicittas, we can say that the third excellence at the end, which is the excellence of dedication, is when we now have both relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta together. Because when we dedicate, right, the act of dedicating is in a way the act of generating bodhicitta. They're two sides of, they're like at 2 points of this process, right? So that's that one side. But when we do this dedication, we also need to know, in fact, nothing happens. Nothing's going on. Nothing happens and we still report it. How is it that nothing happens? Meaning from the absolute point of view, nothing's going on. Everything is already in the state of freedom from elaborations, all these different expressions that some of you might have read in books, neither coming nor going, neither born nor dying. Everything as it is already like that. By becoming awake, you are not turning from having birth and death into not having birth and death. What is happening is you're going from under the power of the delusion of birth and death into freedom from the delusion of birth and death. Under the power of like and dislike, free from the power of like and dislike. Under the power of attachment and aversion, free from the power of attachment and aversion. So that's at the end when we do dedication, these two come together. These two come together, and I sometimes call this like there is a creative tension between these two sides. And so the Heart Sutra expresses it as form is emptiness, emptiness form. Most people just quote the first part, form is emptiness. They just walk around like la 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 la, form is emptiness, but emptiness also is form. So it's not just you go around, whacking with your head, all form, and pretend there's no form. But no, that which is empty has appearance. So this is the excellence at the end, the excellence of the dedication, which is the two bodhicittas now actualize, realize as one. So that's the overall, right, way of approaching such sadhana practice. Page 1, now we look at the specifics of this sadhana. Page 1 begins with this mantra. It's the emptiness mantra. Om Shunyata. Shunyata is emptiness. Empty. Shunya is empty. Ta, Shunyata is emptiness. Om Shunyata. Jnana Vajra. Jnana is liberating knowledge. Jnana. It's not just ordinary knowledge, but liberating knowledge, meaning awakened knowledge. Jnana Vajra Swabhava. Vajra is indestructible. It refers to this mythic weapon that is represented by this ritual object here. The original reference is the king of the gods, Indra in India, which is parallel to the Greek Zeus, And both of them hold this thing called Vajra, the thunderbolt. This is a symbol of the indestructible. In the Vajrayana tradition, this is the indestructible mind, which is the two bodhicittas. Relative bodhicitta has to be firm, indestructible. Relative bodhicitta is based on absolute bodhicitta. Absolute bodhicitta is simply the way things are, rather than the way they appear to be, simply the way things are. That too is indestructible. So Vajra here, Jnana Vajra, means this knowledge, this superior knowledge is indestructible. Swabhava is that its nature is indestructible. Atmako ahang is saying, this I am. So this mantra is essentially like a declaration. It's a proclamation of the way things are. It's like the nature of all things is without essence, without fixity, and therefore I am like that as well. So the mantra serves as a reminder for the teachings and the understandings that we have cultivated about the nature of reality. So this assumes, this assumes that outside the context of doing this practice, you are also learning about what this nature of reality is. If you don't, put some effort into learning what this nature of reality is, what this indestructible reality is, then you could be saying this mantra and thinking of something else. Maybe you think the indestructible nature is, some concretely existing thing out there. Then you're not actually doing this practice. So when you repeat this mantra, then following that, there are some words, right, to unpack what this reality is, what this indestructible reality that you are. What is it? Well, all phenomena, meaning all experiences, meaning whatever turns up, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts, emotions, all experiences subsume under dharmas and dharmata, meaning here is talking about however they appear and however they exist, all of this, subjects and objects, by nature, they are the great expanse of empty luminosity, the inborn state of perfect bliss. Some rather bombastic. It's like tung tung tung, some special effect, okay? But actually, it's the most natural thing. It's the most natural state as it is. All this icing on the cake is to get you to understand that on the one hand, it's the most special thing. And that's from the perspective of confusion. It's like the most marvelous special thing that we should realize we should come face to face with. But from the perspective of someone who have realized it, it's simply like, you mean that's what you're talking about? Yes. Then it's like the most natural, mundane realization. No more exclamations needed. No theme song needed. No fireworks needed. But on this end of confusion, we need the fireworks. We need the theme song so that we can be inspired to discover the way things are. And more specifically, the way our minds are. Our mind, our heart, our being. What is the nature of our being? It's this, the inborn state of perfect bliss. specifically then connecting to Kurukule qualities, it's taking a moment to say, this desire that we feel, this one thing that we have, this goal that I have, this thing that I'm trying to reach, this person I'm trying to reach, whatever it is, we are just looking for substitution for that which need not be substituted and cannot be substituted with something other than this inborn state of perfect bliss. So we begin with this declaration. When you are doing the practice, you don't want to spend too much time thinking of the meaning of all these words. On other occasions, when you're learning about this inborn state in a more systematic way, perhaps you take a class, perhaps you read a book. Yes, by all means, think about it then. But in terms of when you sit down for a formal session of practice, let these words just be prompts. Prompts to just kind of ignite a memory, an understanding of what this is. And then don't do more than that. Now, I have to say, there are other traditions of practicing sadhana that will emphasize systematically going through the 4 types of emptiness, now meditate on emptiness. So a very systematic going through like what's known as the 4 slivers. The impossibility of things arising from themselves, things arising from others, things arising from a combination of self and other, and things arising from neither. So there are some traditions of doing sadhana practice that says, now when you say Om Shunyata Gyana Besar Swabhava Amako Hang, all phenomena subsumed under dharmas, dharmata, subjects and objects, by nature turn into a great expanse of empty luminosity, la 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 la. They say, okay, now you meditate on those 4 impossibilities. And some tradition will teach about how you meditate on dissolution. Then go through a systematic dissolution of your body, how the external world dissolves into you dissolve until your mind is freed from all fixation. That's another way, right? But in the way that I'm suggesting to you, so you need to experiment yourself, because depending on your karmic makeup, one method might work more effectively than other methods. Also, leave the possibility that sometimes one method works better than the other. So don't be rigid with any of these. But the flavor, the style that I tend to emphasize more these days, and you can tell if you go back and listen to some of the older recordings, I have emphasized the other ways. Now, I say, you simply let these words while you're doing the formal practice as prompts, and don't think too much. So just remain in this state of openness without thinking about what these words are saying too much. Then page 2, from this state of emptiness appears a vast protection sphere. So this is talking about like a dome, the way it's described, a huge dome, this protection sphere. Why the need for protection sphere? There are historical references to this. I've explained before that essentially, you could say that this Vajrayana meditation, right, method of becoming the deity or actualizing the deity is built on Indian folk religion practices of spirit possession. It's built on that set of techniques of Indian folk religion spirit possession. And for spirit possession, there's always a concern that when you let down your defenses, the wrong kind of spirit jumps in. And hence the need to, right? It's like if you're going to perform a surgery, you want a pretty sterile environment. Don't do it at the sewer. So this idea of, appears a vast protection sphere. So here, what is this protection sphere? It's bodhicitta. If you protect your practice of spirit possession, here, Kurukule possession, if you practice your Kurukule possession with bodhicitta as your protection sphere, you protect yourself from becoming a megalomaniac or a control freak. Because Kurukule's activity is control, but it's not control the way you and I know control. It's the control of letting go of control. By letting go of control, you gain complete control. But if you don't practice this right, then you can practice Kurukule in a very calculative and therefore deluded way. You can still achieve results, but it will not lead to a happy place. Temporarily, it might feel like you have control over everything. Just a control freak, temporarily can feel like, oh, everything is good now. But in fact, it's just a matter of timing. It's all going to fall apart, the control that you think you have. So the practice of this protection sphere is to basically a reminder that this has to be bodhicitta. From the perspective of bodhicitta, who is Kurukule that is going to appear next, right? Who is Kurukule from the perspective of bodhicitta? None other than Kurukule is the embodiment of bodhicitta. Your desire, your aspiration to achieve awakening, to achieve Buddha for the benefit of all beings is now appearing in the form of Kurukule. So the appearance of Kurukule is relative bodhicitta. The essence of Kurukule is absolute bodhicitta. So Kurukule, your appearing as Kurukule is nothing other than your actualizing bodhicitta. So then it says in the middle of it, on a red lotus and sun disk, on the heart center of a corpse, so there's a corpse there, arises a red Hri syllable, which then transforms into a lotus with a red Hri marking its center, light goes out, which fulfill the two purposes. These two purposes is benefiting self, benefiting others. These lights gather back into the lotus, which then transforms into myself as Kurukule, red like a mountain of rubies, gracefully dancing with the leg drawn up, majestically poised, 16 years old, with crimson upward streaming hair. Ancient Indian aesthetics. 16-year-old is the best. Only 1 year you get to look your best. After that, it's all downhill. 16, they say. In the United States, it has to be 18, okay? most states. So it's a reference to, this is like at the peak of your physical wellness, attractiveness, beauty, la la la. 16. Okay. Crimson upward streaming hair. This upward streaming hair of Kurukule, again, in Indian context, well-behaved, proper, respectable women will tie their hair modestly. She does the opposite. She lets it all out. So it's a little threatening to all those who try to control her. But that's her quality. So it's a certain kind of abandonment. But here again, don't mistake this as, license to be an a-hole. I don't care what you think. I'm just going to have my self-actualization, which is to become a pain in everyone's hiney. Then you're not practicing Kurukule. You're doing something else. Yeah? Kurukule has become something else. I mean, here I have to say, like in Western Dharma centers, part of Dharma has been mixed up with ideas of self-actualization. Be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. Actually, Buddha Dharma says self is a delusion. So be careful, okay? Yeah. So this Kurukule we're trying to actualize, on the one hand, yes, her hair is just flying around like crazy. What that is saying is the normal concerns for gain, pleasure, praise, and fame, throw it into the winds. The normal paranoia towards loss, pain, condemnation, and infamy, throw it into the air. So this hair of Kurukule, blowing wild, means not concerned with these 8, we call them the 8 mundane concerns, the push and the pulling winds that, we're in constant, like right now, constantly being blown left, right, up, down by these 8 winds. And we have no freedom. She dances in the midst of these winds. She doesn't care. So we should be also to actualize this. Crimson upward streaming hair. On my head are the 5 Buddhas in the form of a crown of 5 dried skulls. So I think Buddhas, now I'm convinced, after spending a month in Mexico, I think Buddhas are Mexicans. Everywhere there's skull, 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 skull. The gringos here, they're like, oh, that's evil. But everywhere in Mexico, skull, 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 skull. So here, Kurukule wears this crown of 5 skulls. Skull, what is the symbolism of a skull? It's not about death, although it could be. Yeah. But more to the point is, when all of this has rotted down to its essence, so to say, it's the skull. So this is pointing to emptiness. Yeah, this is pointing to emptiness. And so the wisdom of seeing things as they are, rather than seeing this rotting flesh, seeing things as they are. So she wears these 5 skulls, wearing a necklace of 51 freshly severed heads. Yeah, so we have a statue there. 51 freshly severed heads. These are the 51 states of mind. In Buddhist psychology, they have delineated 51 types of emotions, both positive, negative, and neutral. So it's not bad things. It's not talking about bad things. Positive states of mind, negative states of mind, neutral states of mind. There are 51 that is identified in Buddhist psychology. So the fact that she wears a garland of the 51 freshly severed, right? The idea of freshly severed here is meaning she is not under the control of these 51 states of mind. She has cut them. She's not being dragged around by these 51 states of mind. Now she wears them as a trophy of success to terrify the enemies, which is these deluded states of mind. Because even what we call positive states of mind, yeah, if it is still chained to grasping, then it's golden chains, rusty chains, iron chain, paper chain, golden chain. They're all chains. You have to free them, liberate them. So she wears 51 freshly severed heads with fangs bared. Don't mess with her. It says these fangs, there are two pointing down and two pointing up. Yeah, two pointing down, two pointing up. These are called the four immeasurables. It's in our opening prayers, which is, what are these four fangs? May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the joy that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. These are the four immeasurable minds, the four fangs. So the idea here is that with her four fangs, right? Again, borrowing from popular culture, folk religion, these four fangs are like vampire-like fangs, right? A vampire will and suck the life out of you, right? Now, how do you suck the life out of everything? With the four immeasurable minds. Because life as we know it is confusion-based. How do you deplete confused existence with the four immeasurables? And so her fangs, right? Tongue curled, don't know what that means. Tongue curled, and three red eyes, looking to the left. Why looking to the left? Because she's holding her bow and arrow, pointing that way, looking to the left. So she's not keeping her eyes away from the target. She's paying attention. She's not distracted. So she's looking left. Her eyes are looking left. Actually, it's not the head has turned. The head is front, but looking left. Yeah. Wrathful, seductive, and desirous in expression, wearing the 5 bone ornaments. My two main hands hold a bow of red flowers and draw a red upala tipped arrow. Pull back to the ear. The two lower right hands holds a hook and red upalas. Upalas are flowers, a type of flower, a type of lotus, like lily. And my lower left hand holds a red lasso adorned with lotuses. I radiate like garlands of 100,000 suns and am surrounded by the 8 great cemeteries. So she's dancing in these 8 great cemeteries. 8 great cemeteries are references to 8 holy sites in India. But in the Tantric commentary, they say, even though the original references to 8 geographic sites in India, these 8 places manifest wherever you are. So you can go discover the 8 great cemeteries in Western North Carolina, for those of you who are here. So this is now yourself in the form of Kurukule. Here it doesn't describe, right, the legs specifically, but this is, she's in the dancing posture. Left leg down, right leg up. This is the active dancing posture. Now, any questions? Can they unmute themselves? Yes.
What is she stepping on?
She's stepping on a corpse. Your old dead body. Trample, 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 trample. If you like it, trample, 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 trample. If you don't like it, trample, 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 trample. And so whether you have a good body image, bad body image, doesn't matter. Be done with it. You love your body so much, trample, 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 trample. You hate your body, trample, 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 trample. You go, ooh, squishy. Yeah.
So the other two that we've done so far sit on a moon disc.
She's on a sun disk. Yes.
So what's the significance of that?
She's hot. Hot with wisdom. Sun disk is wisdom. Moon disk is compassion. Yeah. But she's hot too. 1,000 suns, right? 100,000 suns, not 1,000, 100,000 suns. In all senses of that word, hot. She's seductive, attractive. Remember, right? I said earlier during the empowerment, there are 50,000 monks and nuns daily practicing this hot lady to maintain their celibacy vows. It is, Vajrayana is not what it seems, okay?
Hun, there's a message in chat. Is there any?
Oh, yeah, that's Nathan's job, which he's sort of good at. Thank you.
You're welcome. So is there any danger in practicing Kurukule? We get too hot?
Is there any danger in practicing Kurukule? Well, there is danger in practicing anything. That's why we need bodhichitta. That's why we need bodhichitta. Yeah, basically, any practice of deity yoga, so to say, right, has some risk to it. Because one of the main risks to what this kind of practice is called deity yoga, which is taking the identity of the deity, assuming the identity of a Buddha. What is the basic danger to that? Hubris. Hubris. So elsewhere we need to learn about what the 8 worldly concerns are. What are the kleshas that we have to overcome? If we don't know those things, then you just jump into this practice, yeah, you can turn into a maniac. So specifically this section, right, completed, yeah. Again, my suggestions to you is don't think too hard about what I explained to you, what this means, what that means. Let it kind of just hover in the background. When you're doing a session of practice, just, let the form arise, be generally aware of, this is my form, this is my identity. Just let it stay like that without forcing too much. Relax the mind. relax the mind. But not relax so that it's off somewhere else. Still the image, the form of Kurukule is present. But otherwise relax the mind. Then here you can just pause here for a while, depending on how much time you have, right, for a particular session. Then when you're ready, move on to the next. At the forehead is a white Om, at the throat a red A, at the heart a blue Hum. From these three syllables, rays of multicolored light radiate out to invite the host of Jnana Sattvas and empowerment deities to the space in front. Here, basically, you are repeating the empowerment that we did this morning in a condensed form. So this is called path empowerment. What you experienced this morning is called ground empowerment, meaning the basis. The basis has already been given to you this morning. Now, on a daily basis, you re-empower yourself as Kurukule. So path is referring to method. So now empowerment as a method is what you are familiarizing with, is what you are habituating. So again, don't think too much about this. There's a technical term here, Jnana Sattvas. And then later, there's another technical term, Samaya Sattvas. If you go to page 6, it says the Jnana Sattvas merge non-dually with the Samaya Sattvas. So who are the Samaya Sattvas? Samaya Sattva is yourself in the form of deity. So if we say plural, it's simply to say all beings are also Samaya Sattvas in the same form. Jnana Sattvas, see in Sanskrit and Tibetan, well, in Sanskrit there is no plural singular per se, at least here. So the numbers, plural, singular, doesn't matter. So don't get too fixated on one, many, right? So when we say the Jnana Sattvas come, right, which is what page 5 is, right? Light go radiate out. From these three syllables, rays of multicolored light radiate out to invite the Jnana Sattvas and empowerment deities. So here, if you want to be technical, to be clearer, there are two groups. The first group are the Jnana Sattvas, which is the knowledge beings. This is Kurukule herself. Just like during the empowerment, right? When Alex was walking around with the incense and the kata, that is the knowledge beings coming. That's actual Kurukule arriving to possess you. That's the spirit possession part. It's based on what ancient Indians understood, that this spirit comes to possess you. The other day in our Wednesday night group, I talked about how growing up in Asia, we watch people doing spirit possession all the time. So it's kind of common. But here, the idea is you are possessed by Kurukule. But in the ordinary spirit possession that we experience day to day, I mean, not every day, but basically mediums, special individuals, channel certain gods or goddesses to solve problems for others. People with all kinds of problems, illness, job problems, relationship problems, blah, blah, blah. You go consult these mediums. They channel the spirits. But in those spirit channeling, usually people are shaking. It seems to be a common one through many cultures of spirit possession. People shake. But here, there's no shaking. If you want to shake a little bit, I suppose it's okay. in your own space, not at the temple, please. So the Gyanasattvas, but also the empowerment deities, the 5 Buddha families, they are also invited into this space. In the ritual empowerment is 2 steps. Here it's combined as 1 step. So here, if you look at the symbols, there's a bell, a dorje, and this round thing. It's the notation for telling you play your ritual instruments now. The bell, so if you know how to play the ritual instruments, then you play the ritual instruments to welcome the knowledge beings and the empowerment deities. Yeah? Then you make offerings to them. Bajra pushpe, flowers. Bajra dupe, incense. Bajra aloke, light. Bajra gande, perfume. Bajra nevede, food. You offer to these deities. Page 6. Za hong bam ho. There are specific mudras. Za hong bam ho. Don't get all tangled. You can learn later. Come on, I don't know, those of you who are at the temple, come on Tuesday, Wednesday. Nathan sometimes is here. Or some other time you can ask, people who know how to do za hong bam ho. And this is the wisdom deities and the samaya sattvas becoming one. So the next line, and then samaya sattam. Samaya sattam is the commitment to be one is now firm. Then it says, ahong, the Jnana Sattvas merge non-dually with the Samaya Sattvas. So you do this. So merge together. Then supplicating the empowerment deities, you put your hands together. So you request now to the next set of guests you invite for empowerment. How do you do this request? You say, Sarva Tathagata Abhisinchantu Mam. Upon being supplicated in this way, the empowerment deities hold precious vases filled with elixir and say, Sarva, so you can ring your bell if you have. Sarva Tathagata Abhishekata Samaya Shriye Hung. So just like during the empowerment, when I came up to you and pour some, I was ringing the bell and chanting this empowerment mantra. So likewise, you now rehearse that again. So the elixir fills my entire body, purifying all impurities. The overflow of elixir becomes a crown of the 5 families of the 5 Buddhas, with the presiding Lord of the deities family in the center. In this case, the presiding Lord, like the root Buddha of Kurukule's family, Kurukule's group, is Amitabha, Buddha of infinite light. So Amitabha sits in the center, then with the 4 other Buddhas. Then the empowerment deities dissolve into me completely. After they finish giving empowerment, they dissolve into you. Then you make offerings. Now the 8 offerings. The guests that are invited in the space in front, just to point out, is just the 5 offerings. Now the 8 offerings. I don't know why. It's always like this. So now the 8 offerings. Argham, the first one is the water for drinking. Padyang is water for washing. Pushpe, flowers. Dupe, incense. Aloke, light. Gande, perfume. Naivede, food. And Shapta, music. Gande, the perfume, is not just for good smell. It's said that the perfume should be rubbed in the chest area, the solar plexus. And so the mudra is like this. So it's something, it's what we would call like a lotion, a balm, a fragrant lotion and balm that you rub in the heart. It's said to cool the body down. Yeah, so the scent, of course, is uplifting, usually sandalwood, but also sandalwood has the quality of cooling down the body.
So it's Vicks vapor rub.
It's like a Vicks vapor rub, yes, but not sticky and yes. Then I did not put the symbols, but here also at the offering of the music, if you have your ritual instruments, you play them. Yeah, the ritual instruments here. Then next, praising. Ruby colored, passionately focused on kindness. So her passion, her desire, her lust even is a lust of kindness, being kind. Ruby colored, passionately focused on kindness with a graceful, exalted form that has one face, 4 arms, and 2 legs, holding bow, arrow, and uppala, hook and lasso. Homage and praise to you, Bhagavati Kurukule. Then ring the bell if you have bell while holding the Vajra. So this is a praise. When you don't have time and you want to do a very brief Kurukule practice, you can just say this praise and then say the mantra. That's like a very concise way of practicing. Next on page 9, visualizing what's inside the heart. On the lotus and moon in the heart. So interestingly here, it's a moon, not a sun. Yeah. So she's standing on a sun disk, but inside her heart is a moon. The seed syllable of the deity. So here, Kri, Kurukule. Surrounded by a red mantra garland, meaning the rest of the mantra. So the mantra is Om Kurukule Kri Swaha. So that is what's on the periphery of that moon. So the light streaming out from the revolving mantra makes offerings to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, gathers back their blessings, coming back in the form of light, dissolving back into this seed syllable. Then again, light goes out, purifying misdeeds and obscurations of all sentient beings of the 3 realms, establishing them in the state of nirvana and accomplishing all exalted activities. The light returns and dissolves into the seed syllable and mantra garland. Then repeat the mantra, Om Kurukule Hri Swaha, Om Kurukule Hri Swaha. That's the mantra recitation. During the mantra recitation, you can repeat the different parts of what we just said. Like going out, making offerings to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You can just, think like keep going out, making offerings to all the awakened beings, making offerings to all the awakened beings. Then for a period of time, you can think all the lights coming back from the awakened beings to bless you, to purify, cleanse you. Then also you can think now light goes out, purifying the misdeeds and obscurations of all beings of the 3 realms, turning them all into Kurukule as well. And then the light coming back. So you can just switch from one to the other, depending on what makes you more present, basically. At other times, don't mumble the mantra. Just remain with the presence of being Kurukule, and that's in fact is the main part. In fact, the mantra is only when it's hard to keep maintaining yourself as Kurukule, and you want to rest, then you repeat the mantra. The instructions are pretty clear about this, but when this is performed in monasteries, often it seems like there's a mad rush to the mantra. They will chant all the parts in the beginning really fast. Then they get to the mantra, then spend 1 hour chanting the mantra. But the real training is actually, they say, to establish the confidence, and even using the word pride, of being the deity. No particular melody. Here, if you can come up with a melody that inspires you, you can do that. The notes here say the mantra should be recited with a mala of red sandalwood. If one recites this 60 million times, you will become a Chakravartin king of the 6 realms. You become a powerful king, and all sentient beings will be enchanted by you. So if that's your goal, then you have to do 60 million times. Yes.
You know anybody who's done it?
No.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, good. Then tell us whether it works or not, okay?
It will probably just shut off all my
When you reach 60 million, then you can tell us whether it works or not.
Your hands or fingers are gonna be all sleepy. Your fingers.
60 million, right? So it says here a mala of red sandalwood. So when it comes to these Vajrayana deity practices, often for each deity, they will tell you what material to use. And so more generally, it is said that any kind of mala made from sandalwood, what we call sandalwood, they call white sandalwood. What they call red sandalwood is some other wood, which we don't call sandalwood, just to be clear. But the really fragrant aromatic thing that we call sandalwood specifically is called white sandalwood. So here it says use red sandalwood. So generally white sandalwood mala, red sandalwood mala is said to be good for any kind of mantra practice. And also then the superior mala material, according to these instructions, is a type of seed that is called bodhichitta seed. Bodhichitta seed, by the way, doesn't come from the tree that we call Bodhi tree. The tree that we call Bodhi tree, the seed cannot, it's more like a fig, like a really tiny fig. Doesn't taste good in any case. But the consistency is more like a fig, so it's squishy. So if you go to Bodh Gaya, the most famous Bodhi tree in the world is the one at Bodh Gaya where the Buddha achieved awakening. If you go there and look for seeds, there's just these teeny weeny fig-like seed. This bodhicitta seed comes from a tree that grows predominantly in the hills in Nepal, contemporary, present-day Nepal. Particularly this one area called Namo Buddha. This one area called Namo Buddha. There are these trees. So it is said that the seed from that tree is the superior material to use for mantra accumulation. How literally you want to follow all these instructions, I leave it to you. Some of us need more special effect. If you are that type, then you go get, whatever they tell you to get. Some of us don't need that much special effect, right? So then whatever is fine. So this is the bodhicitta seed. It's type of seed. This mala, this one as well. It's bodhicitta.
Can you show it closer, the malas?
Well, there's not much to see.
It's hard to see the seeds.
Yeah, basically, when you go online and you look for this bodhi seeds or bodhichitta seeds, most of the time it's not. Okay, whatever people are selling you that they call bodhi seeds, usually it's something else. So before you spend money getting it, you might want to check with someone who knows what they're looking at to tell you whether what they're selling is or isn't this supposed bodhi seed. Unfortunately, some very rich people have decided they want to practice mantra, so they have caused the price of the seeds to shoot up like crazy.
I know. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But, you know, I think you can get red sandalwood, even white sandalwood. White sandalwood now has become also kind of rare, but you can get red and white sandalwood fairly easily. So for those of you at the temple, if you really need it, there's red sandalwood over there. I brought some in from the store. So if you're interested, they are there. So for those of you online, you want to order, of course, Tibetan Spirit has red sandalwood, 2 types, I think. If somebody finds the link, you can share that. But as I say, you know, do you really need? Well, depends on you. Sometimes, you know, I feel more inspired if I follow everything. Well, then you can get there. Some great lamas actually say, for a different mantra, you use a different mala.
Mm.
They say that. Some great lamas say, just use one mala is enough. Don't need a whole boutique of malas. So both views are there. I often joke, but I'm serious too. I said, for Vajrayana especially, for every rule, there are 3 exceptions. Just remember that. For every rule, there are 3 exceptions. Don't get carried away.
Someone asks,
Mhm.
red crystal, is it fine or regular sin?
Yeah, you know, answered that question already. Thank you. It's like, it's fine. It's up to you, you know. What you need to do to trick yourself into being inspired to do the practice.
Rinpoche, what does it mean if you're like my 3 malas broke all within a day of each other?
Oh, they are all needing restraining, you know, impermanent strikes. Don't be too hard on your mala. But yeah, they need to be restrung from time to time, so you got to pay attention. Especially like stone material, because they rub onto the cord. So the stone malas, they tend to break more frequently. And then if your mala is very tight, yeah, so there's no space that moves from one bead to another, then you know the logistics of that is that your string won't get like worked on so much. Yeah? But then if it is loose, yeah, then basically you are actually right thinning it down as you are using. If there's space, if the thread is exposed, right? Yeah, the question about, you know, oh, mala breaking, you know, in Chinese culture, Chinese like soap opera, there is like dramatic scenes of like people using the mala and it bursts and then some bad news happened. Growing up in Chinese culture, you know, we have, usually in movies, you know, and it comes with like tong tong tong, you know, and then the shot to the mala all flying all over the place. Again, how much you want to believe that, I don't know. After as many malas, as many mantras you want to recite, then the conclusion is this kind of conclusion. It says on page 10, if anything was incomplete, has degenerated, or was beyond my ability to perform, whatever additions, omissions, or mistakes I have made, please forgive them. Then you recite the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva 3 times, ringing the bell. Then the dissolution. Dissolution is on page 11. The Gyanasattvas return to their natural abodes. Then you think, the actual Kurukule dissolve back into wherever she came from. Then the true essence of the Samaya Sattva, yourself, in other words, the universe and all beings becomes the empty and the pure supreme bliss of non-conceptual luminosity by nature. Where we started, basically. Then reflecting thus, meditate, and then meditate. So that means just remain in that state. Just stay there. Then conclude with, at the very end, then you do the dedication. Through this merit, right? May all sentient beings of the 3 realms swiftly attain the primordial wisdom of the Tathagatas. Then whatever other dedication prayers you know and you want to add, you can add here. And you complete this. So the way to relate to these sadhanas is, of course, to understand that you develop them piece by piece, and it takes time. Don't expect the first time you sit down and you do, you get everything, you can do everything. No, you work on this, part by part. And the main thing is not to get stuck. One way of practicing the sadhana like this, which is the way that doesn't emphasize so much the technical aspects, is by way of practicing this as a type of mahamudra practice. Mahamudra is the main tradition, main style of practice, main practice, especially of the Kagyupa lineage. So myself is part of the Kagyupa lineage. So in the Kagyupa lineage, Mahamudra is said to be the main practice. Main doesn't mean like, we don't do other things. Here, main really means we do everything from this standpoint of the Mahamudra. So then more specifically in the Drikung Kagyu, one of the types of Kagyus, which is really where my lineage is, there is this overarching principle called the 5-fold Mahamudra. Mahamudra that incorporates the 5 elements. So what are the 5 elements? The first element is bodhichitta. The second element is the form of the deity. The third element is devotion to the guide, the spiritual guide. The fourth element is called the natural state Mahamudra. And the 5th element is dedication. So you can anchor your practice with this text, but do it with the understanding of these 5 elements. So bodhicitta takes on the form of the deity. So now 2 of the 5 are there. Third, Amitabha above your head. Understand that to be deepening, establishing your connection with your guide, your spiritual guide. Always be mindful of the spiritual guide. So in this sense, it's kind of like what Christian says, WWJD. What would Jesus do? This is what would the Lama do? What would the Guru do? So mindful of the Guru at all times. Then the 4th, the natural state. That means when you recite the mantra, the main part, just relax the mind. Or even if you're not reciting the mantra, you're just being aware of yourself as Kurukule, Amitabha above your head. Let the mind just rest evenly. And don't get caught up in all the details. Simply letting this appearance of Kurukule be present and boundless light going out, and understand this light as a light of wishing wellness, wishing freedom from suffering for all beings. As you breathe in all the blessings of Kurukule. As you breathe out wellness for all beings. Just meditating like this. That is the training in the natural state mahamudra. Then without worrying about 60 million recitation or 6,000 or 60, just resting in that, right? And then dissolution at the end, just let the whole visualization just dissolve naturally. Then dedication at the end. So these are the 5 parts. So another way of doing this practice is to anchor it on what's known as the 5 parts. Again, the 5 parts, bodhichitta. Bodhichitta takes on the form of the deity. Now you have the form of the deity. Above your head is the guide, then the natural state, and then dedication. These are the 5 parts. Questions? Amitabha is usually like Kurukule, red in color. His hands are held in the meditation posture, and usually there's a begging bowl that he holds in his hand, and dress, like a Buddha, like a monk. Yeah. So he's above, Amitabha.
What's he again with Kurukule?
He's Kurukule's teacher. Yeah, the lord of the family, they call him. Yeah, so it's like the main principle of that family, which is the transformation of desire, the attainment of the wisdom of discernment. In the Western direction, red in color, the element of fire, all of that is associated and is called the lotus family. Yeah. So the working with desire ends up with the attainment of the wisdom of discernment. So what that tells us is that when we let desire take over, usually what happens is discernment goes out the window. Whatever it is that we desire is exaggerated. Yeah, we're exaggerating certain things about that object and ignoring other things about that object. And then it becomes desirable. There's no discernment. But Amitabha and Kurukule, where they overcome frustration and dissatisfaction is with complete discernment. They see very clearly. And so then they become free of desire. Then they become free of frustration. So how we relate to desire is in the practice of Kurukule, in the more, I guess, if you want something more to say about that, it's so that when desire arises, it's not that you push it away, so you don't push it away, neither do you try to, scratch that itch. But you just let that itch, so to say, be present and watch it. And you watch it and you watch it with discernment, it falls apart. It cannot sustain itself. Normally what we do is we immediately want to scratch it. Or now we think, oh, I'm a spiritual person, so I'm going to suppress it. Either way will lead to trouble. But just with wisdom of discernment, watch it. It's good to cultivate restraint at the beginning. There's a fine line between restraint and suppression. Initially, when you apply restraint, yes, of course, there's some frustration, right? But understand this, when you apply restraint, the frustration that comes up immediately is a self-induced frustration. Recognize that. Recognize that you have some kind of power now, right? When you exercise restraint, right, you are in control in a good way. Yeah. When it is just frustration because you cannot get what you want, you have no control. You are at the control. You are controlled by the object of desire. So when we practice restraint with regards to desire arising, you are actually strengthening a certain mental muscle, you know. So it's good to cultivate restraint, even when you want to give into that desire, right? At least you have exercised that muscle of restraint. I'm not saying that you never give into desire. Let's be realistic. You're like, finally, I want to scratch. So let's go to ice cream after this. Yay, right? But don't always just keep going to ice cream without any restraint. And not only is it probably going to be bad for your health, but also, if you don't use opportunities that come your way, so this is the inner guru, to develop certain healthy mental muscles, then when you really need those muscles to work, you don't have them. That's the problem. So even literally with itch, when you're sitting in meditation, don't immediately scratch. That is a potential guru turning up. Can you turn it into your inner guru by practicing restraint? Like, I'm not going to scratch. Again, I say, you know, Buddhism is not an anti-scratching cult. But in instructions on meditations, letting body and mind settle, it does say, don't just scratch, fidget, move, you know. Have some restraint and say, I'm practicing restraint now. It's not that scratching is evil. It's not that pleasure is evil. This we have to be clear, you know. Sometimes even Buddha Dharma, the way I grew up in Asia, we practice it in a way that is filled with guilt. Whether it's food, you know, whether it's whatever it is that you desire, sex, whatever, right? There's also a lot of guilt kind of built into it. But if you really understand what the Buddha is saying, it's not that these things are bad. It's not that they make you a bad person. The problem with pleasure is you can never get enough of it. And if you fall victim to a constant chase of pleasure and a constant running away from pain, you will never get satisfaction. You will never be happy. So while you can, within, you know, reasonable means, cultivate that muscle of restraint. Right now, it might be restraint first, but as you work on that, you can also work on the Kurukule energy, so to say, which is satisfaction that is not reliant on getting or not getting what you want. a higher kind of satisfaction. So work on it on that level. Then the sadhana becomes powerful. If you don't understand exactly what you're working on, mindlessly performing the sadhana is not going to make any of the Kurukule qualities turn up in your life. Then it becomes like mindless engagement of this. It doesn't work like that.
Is there a melody to the mantra?
No, already answered that question, right? Everybody is saying yes. Already answered that question.
What are, I think it was called something like external activities and something.
Sorry?
This section that says attaining, I think, or.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can go.
Relax. Don't stare at me.
Accomplishing all exalted
Page.
activities on Page 9.
Always start with page.
Page 9.
Uh-huh.
Visualize, and then it says.
Accomplishing all exalted activities.
Oh,
Yeah.
what are those?
Exalted activities means Buddha activities.
Oh.
What are Buddha activities? Benefiting beings.
Karen asks, how are restraint and suppression different?
They are different. So now you go figure it out. How are restraint and suppression different, right? They are different. You have to experience it yourself. How much can I tell, I already told what I could tell. Then you have to experience it. Just know that there is a difference. And you will discover what the difference is. And in the process of discovering, you will go in both directions. That's how it works, The book cannot tell you everything, but there is a difference. And it'll take a while to discover that. It's a balance, right? Questions are good, Answer might not be what you want. Yes.
Regarding restraint versus suppression,
Uh-huh.
I think suppression has an unconscious aspect to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even realize
Right.
that we are suppressing.
Yeah.
Restraint is more conscious.
Yeah. Restraint. So one quality, which I mentioned, right? The difference between, and Judy is reminding us now. With restraint, you put intention to it. Suppression is that old habit of because we know to some degree, right, we cannot get it. So then how do we deal with it? We suppress it and don't want to see it, right? Because it's too painful to see it. Restraint is bring the object right in front. So you start with simple things. Itch. No, physical itch. You start with that. Next time you feel like scratching, don't. Watch it. Don't wait until you get poison ivy to do the practice. Too late. But if you develop this ability, then if you do get poison ivy, it will be less miserable. So start with simple things. Yeah, so like thirst, for most of us, it's not a big problem between the desire to drink and able to drink. Luckily, for many of us, it's not really an issue. And should you make it a problem? No, but can you use it to practice restraint? Yes. Again, Buddha did not say don't drink water. This is not some crazy don't drink water cult. But you can, that's how everything can become guru. That's the inner guru. If you know how to let things that arise in your day-to-day life help you to train these mental, emotional muscles. Dharma practice is not, one tool fix everything. Yeah, it's having a good variety of tools in your toolbox, but all geared towards the same goal. There are many ways to express what the same goal is. One of the ones that I use more commonly these days is to actualize the two bodhicittas, relative and absolute bodhicitta. If you can kind of organize all your practices under this understanding, then it doesn't matter what tool you use. I'm also now not so much saying, oh, you have to do this sadhana, you have to do it X number of times, you have to do this until the rest of your life. Yes, there is wisdom to that, especially people who are habitually going from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. Yeah, so, teachers will say, no, do this one practice, stare at the wall for the rest of your life. Maybe some good will come from it. Yeah. There is a method to that. But myself now, I'm saying, actually, specific methods and techniques are secondary to what you're committed to from the heart level. Work on that. Work on committing to the project of actualizing the two bodhicittas, then doesn't matter. Today you do this practice, tomorrow you do that practice, day after you do this practice, halfway through a practice, you switch to another practice. I think it's secondary. To knowing that, where am I, wanting to go with this? So in that way, bodhicitta can compensate for everything else. Good. So now we are at the end of today's program. We'll keep it short. In the future, we'll make it longer. That's the goal, okay? Not shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. We want to develop capacity and circumstance and opportunity. So we all make choices, so choices that we make will determine, what kind of results we get. If we have magic thinking, sometimes it might work. Most of the time, probably it won't work. To the questions of like, how much should I do? How dedicated should I be? Well, karma is without mistake, cause and effect. Yeah. You can't cheat your way to enlightenment. You can't wish your way to enlightenment. It's just as simple as that, But don't get too disappointed because you say, oh, I can't do what it takes, Sometimes, even if you cannot do what it takes, if at least you have some understanding of the mechanics of what's going on, then whatever misery that you're feeling doesn't need to be so heavy. Even if you cannot stop the misery from unfolding, which if you put enough effort into Dharma practice, it can. But then you say, there's too much Netflix to watch, Then at least maintain understanding. At least maintain an understanding of what in the heck is going on when suffering turns up. Then even that, I think, is very helpful. Yeah. Even that can be very helpful. Some understanding of what is going on. There's a question, can we do the practice together? Not today, because again, we say we're going to add at 3. I want to be disciplined about that. There are pets and people waiting for some of you. I don't want pets and people to resent your Dharma plans, okay? Next time, when we say, okay, we're going to do this practice for an hour, then we can do for an hour. If we say half an hour, we can do half an hour. And especially those of us who have come to the temple doesn't undo itself. Some of us have to reconfigure the temple and put it back to what it used to be. We share this space with several other Buddhist groups, so we don't want to confuse them. Not to boast, we share with others without naming a price. So it's not because our customers will complain, but it's the right thing to do, not to confuse people who share this space, whether they're paying or not paying. This is how urban Dharma works. Thankfully, it has worked for the last 10, 12 years. We hope it will continue to work. As Judy said at the beginning, we don't have any paid staff, and it's quite magical. Without any paid staff, we have so much generosity. This place exists because of all your generosity. I can continue to do what I do because of your generosity. Generosity comes in so many forms. One kind of generosity is actually turning up in person here. Because believe it or not, it helps those of us who have turned up. There is some kind of energy that is built. Some of you obviously cannot turn up, but you turn up on Zoom. That helps. That is a form of generosity. So there are many, many ways to practice this generosity, and we recognize that we are here because of everyone's generosity. So thank you so much for joining us. We will end with a simple dedication prayer. The translation of it is, actually, if you have the gray book, it is on page 26 in the middle. It says, bodhichitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Chanchu sem chorim poche, ma ge pa nam ge gyurji. Eba nyam pa me pa ya, one gong du pe war sho. If you have not registered for these programs, it's a good idea to register formally, so that you are on our email list. When we have announcement about these programs, you will get those announcements. In particular, I'm going to record these practices. And so then we will make those links of the recordings available to you. So please register online. So if you're on Zoom, Javier just shared the registration link. So that's helpful. Then you can go download, or listen to the practice and do the practice together. Yeah. So that's it, right? Oh, not quite. Judy is back.
When you register, we must get the link to the recording of the.
Yes. Yeah.
Just a reminder, now is the time for a copper offering, a donation, dana, and appreciation for this teaching, which has just been fantastic. The katas are there in this basket, envelopes where you can put your donation in are available where John is standing. And as a reminder, the last of these 4 empowerments is going to be August 13th. That is the activity of destroying with Ekajata. And the last Sunday of this month, which will be the 4th Sunday, normally the 4th Sunday, we have a smoke offering that's done here, starts at 10 o'clock, lasts maybe an hour, hour and a half. And also for you people who are on Zoom, if Dr. Lai has a PayPal account, if you would like to offer dana to him through PayPal, Javier, if you can post the PayPal account, that would be helpful. Again, thank you all for coming. I think it's been great. Glad you're here and hope to see you all again. Thank you.
Thank you. PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, visualization. That one you have to work harder, visualization.
And also, we can all help with the moving of the
Yes.
kitchens and so forth.
So, Tata, everybody, I think you can unmute yourself.
Gracias, doctor.
You can unmute yourself.
Adiós.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Adiós a todos.
Thank
Gracias.
See you next week.
Gracias.
Much.
Gracias.
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 Thank you.
Gracias. Bye.
Muchas gracias.
Bye.
Tata. Yeah, you come here. Don't have such long hands.